You're on your own now, Victoria. I can't watch you die slowly, and I deserve to be happy." Those were the last words my husband spoke to me before walking out of our home while I was halfway through chemotherapy treatments that were supposed to save my life. What he didn't know, what nobody knew, was that 3 months later, a $50 million trust fund from my late grandmother would activate on my 35th birthday. The look on his new girlfriend's face when that money appeared in my accounts was absolutely priceless. But let me take you back to where this story really begins, because the woman I became through that nightmare was worth more than any inheritance could ever be. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Victoria Ashworth had constructed her life around the careful balance of professional success and domestic harmony that defined the aspirations of her generation. At 34, she managed a mid-sized marketing firm in Charleston, South Carolina, overseeing campaigns for regional businesses while maintaining the kind of organized household that seemed effortless but required considerable behind-the-scenes coordination. Her days began at 5:30 with yoga sessions in the converted garage studio she had designed herself, followed by coffee with her husband Robert while they reviewed their respective schedules and coordinated evening plans. The house they shared in the historic district reflected their combined aesthetic preferences and financial priorities. Victorian architecture provided the foundation for interiors that blended traditional elements with contemporary functionality. Victoria had spent 3 years perfecting the details, from selecting period-appropriate light fixtures to designing storage solutions that preserved the home's character while accommodating modern life. The result was a space that felt both elegant and livable, suitable for the dinner parties and professional gatherings that had become central to their social identity. Robert worked as a senior associate at one of Charleston's established law firms, specializing in corporate contracts and mergers that provided steady income and clear advancement opportunities. Their relationship had developed through mutual professional contacts, beginning with casual encounters at networking events and progressing through carefully planned dates that demonstrated their compatibility in terms of values, ambitions, and lifestyle preferences. Marriage had felt like a natural evolution rather than a dramatic transformation, formalizing a partnership that already functioned smoothly in practical terms. Their daily routines reflected this commitment to efficiency and mutual support. Victoria typically left for work by 7:15, arriving at her office before most of her staff to review client communications and prepare for morning meetings. Her marketing firm specialized in helping small to medium-sized businesses develop comprehensive brand strategies, work that required both creative vision and analytical precision. Victoria took pride in her ability to understand client needs quickly and translate them into campaigns that produced measurable results. Her reputation for reliability and strategic thinking had built a client base that generated consistent revenue while allowing for selective growth. Robert's schedule was less predictable, with client demands and court appearances creating variations that required flexibility from both partners. Evening plans were often adjusted based on his workload, though they maintained certain rituals that provided stability and connection. Tuesday dinners at their favorite restaurant, weekend morning runs through the historic district, and Sunday afternoon visits to local galleries or museums had become traditions that anchored their relationship, despite the pressures of their respective careers. Victoria's approach to work reflected her broader philosophy about success and security. She believed that careful planning, consistent effort, and attention to detail would provide protection against the uncertainties that disrupted other people's lives. Her marketing campaigns succeeded because she researched target demographics thoroughly, tested messaging systematically, and monitored results continuously. Her marriage functioned smoothly because she and Robert communicated openly about expectations, shared household responsibilities equitably, and addressed conflicts directly rather than allowing resentment to accumulate. This systematic approach extended to their financial management and future planning. Victoria maintained detailed budgets that tracked expenses across multiple categories, contributed consistently to retirement accounts, and had begun researching properties for potential investment purposes. She and Robert discussed major purchases extensively, weighing options and considering long-term implications before making commitments. Their financial stability was not accidental, but rather the result of deliberate choices and disciplined habits that prioritized security over spontaneous indulgence. The couple's social circle consisted primarily of other professional couples who shared similar values and lifestyle patterns. Weekend gatherings typically involved dinner parties, where conversation focused on career developments, travel plans, and home improvement projects. Victoria enjoyed these interactions because they provided opportunities to strengthen professional networks while maintaining personal friendships. She and Robert were often complimented on their apparent compatibility and the obvious effort they put into maintaining their relationship and household. Victoria's family background had instilled strong beliefs about personal responsibility and the importance of building stable foundations for future generations. Her parents had both worked in education, modeling lives of service and steady progress rather than dramatic achievement or risk-taking. They had emphasized the value of education, hard work, and careful planning as the keys to long-term success and security. Victoria had internalized these lessons, building a career and relationship that reflected their influence, while adapting their principles to contemporary circumstances. Her grandmother Eleanor had been somewhat different from the rest of the family, possessing an entrepreneurial spirit and willingness to take calculated risks that had seemed unusual for her generation. Eleanor had started several small businesses throughout her life, from a catering service in the 1960s to a small chain of boutique shops in the 1980s. While Victoria had admired her grandmother's independence and success, she had not been particularly close to Eleanor during her adult years, their contact limited to holiday gatherings and occasional phone calls. Eleanor's death 2 years earlier had been sad but not unexpected, as her health had been declining for several months. The funeral had been well attended, with former business associates and community members sharing stories about Eleanor's generosity and determination. Victoria had been touched by these testimonials, but had not been surprised by them, as she had always known that her grandmother was respected in their community. The reading of Eleanor's will had been straightforward, with modest bequests to various family members and charitable organizations. Victoria's own goals centered on building the kind of stable, successful life that would allow her and Robert to eventually start a family while maintaining their professional achievements. She envisioned children who would grow up in the beautiful home they had created, surrounded by books and art and opportunities for enrichment. She wanted to be the kind of mother who could provide both emotional support and practical guidance, helping her children develop confidence and capabilities that would serve them throughout their lives. The marketing firm provided Victoria with professional satisfaction and financial security, but she also viewed it as preparation for the leadership and organizational skills that effective parenting would require. Managing client relationships, coordinating project timelines, and solving creative problems were all transferable skills that would benefit her in future roles. She had begun transitioning some responsibilities to younger staff members, not because she was ready to step back, but because she wanted to develop systems that would function smoothly when she eventually needed to balance work with family obligations. Robert shared these aspirations for their future, though his timeline was somewhat more aggressive than Victoria's. He had recently been promoted to partner track at his firm, a development that increased both his income potential and his work demands. Victoria supported his career advancement while maintaining her own professional goals, believing that their mutual success would provide the strongest foundation for the family they planned to build together. Their conversations about children had become more frequent and detailed as Victoria approached her 35th birthday. They had discussed practical considerations like timing, childcare, and financial planning, as well as philosophical questions about values, education, and parenting styles. These discussions had revealed high levels of compatibility and shared vision, reinforcing Victoria's confidence in their partnership and their future together. The health insurance benefits provided through Victoria's firm were comprehensive, including coverage for preventative care and family planning services. She had begun scheduling regular checkups and consultations in preparation for pregnancy, wanting to ensure that her health was optimal before attempting to conceive. These appointments had become routine parts of her schedule, no more concerning than dental cleanings or annual eye examinations. Victoria's exercise routine and nutrition habits already reflected the kind of healthy lifestyle that would support pregnancy and child rearing. She prepared most meals at home using fresh ingredients, limited alcohol consumption to special occasions, and maintained consistent sleep schedules that prioritized rest and recovery. These habits had developed gradually over several years, becoming natural parts of her routine rather than burdensome obligations. The stability and predictability of Victoria's life felt comfortable and sustainable, rather than boring or limiting. She appreciated the security that came from careful planning and consistent effort, viewing her routines as investments in long-term happiness, rather than constraints on spontaneity. While she occasionally envied friends who traveled extensively or changed careers impulsively, she believed that her approach would provide better outcomes for herself and her future family. The marketing campaigns Victoria developed for her clients often focused on themes of reliability, quality, and long-term value, rather than novelty or excitement. She understood the appeal of dramatic change and bold statements, but she specialized in helping businesses build sustainable relationships with customers who valued consistency and trustworthiness. This professional expertise reinforced her personal philosophy about the benefits of steady progress over dramatic gestures. Victoria's relationship with Robert felt particularly solid as they approached their 5th anniversary and her 35th birthday. They had weathered minor conflicts and stress periods without fundamental damage to their partnership, building confidence in their ability to handle whatever challenges might arise in the future. Their communication patterns had evolved to become more efficient and supportive, while their physical and emotional intimacy had remained strong despite the pressures of their respective careers. The approaching milestone birthday had prompted some reflection about goals and priorities, but Victoria felt satisfied with the progress she had made toward her major objectives. Her career was thriving, her marriage was stable, her health was excellent, and her financial situation was secure. The next phase of her life would involve building the family she and Robert had planned, a transition that felt natural and exciting rather than daunting or uncertain. Victoria had no way of knowing that a routine medical appointment scheduled for the week after her birthday would shatter every assumption she had made about security, stability, and the people she trusted most. The life she had built so carefully was about to be tested in ways that would reveal both devastating betrayals and hidden strengths she had never known she possessed. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The appointment was scheduled for Tuesday morning at 9:15, a routine annual physical that Victoria had booked 6 months in advance with Dr. Sarah Chen, her primary care physician for the past 8 years. Victoria arrived early, as was her custom, using the waiting time to review client emails on her phone, while classical music played softly in the background of the medical office's deliberately calming environment. She had completed the standard pre-appointment questionnaire the previous evening, noting no significant changes in her health status or concerns that required special attention. Dr. Chen greeted Victoria with the professional warmth that had characterized their relationship since Victoria first became her patient. The examination proceeded through familiar routines: weight and blood pressure measurements, discussion of family medical history updates, review of current medications and supplements. Victoria mentioned that she and Robert were planning to start trying for children within the next year, prompting Dr. Chen to recommend prenatal vitamins and schedule additional screening tests that would establish baseline health metrics for pregnancy planning. The physical examination revealed nothing unusual during the standard assessments. Victoria's vital signs were excellent, her energy levels remained high, and she reported no symptoms or concerns that might indicate underlying health issues. Dr. Chen complimented her on maintaining the healthy lifestyle habits they had discussed in previous appointments, noting that Victoria's consistent exercise routine and balanced nutrition provided an excellent foundation for both general health and future pregnancy. However, during the breast examination portion of the appointment, Dr. Chen's expression shifted to one of focused concentration. Her fingers paused over an area in Victoria's left breast, returning to examine it more thoroughly while maintaining the clinical composure that medical professionals develop to avoid alarming patients unnecessarily. Victoria noticed the change in Dr. Chen's examination pattern but initially attributed it to routine thoroughness rather than any specific concern. "Victoria, I'm feeling something here that I'd like to investigate further," Dr. Chen said, her voice maintaining its professional calm while her hands continued their careful assessment. There's a small area that feels different from the surrounding tissue. It's probably nothing serious, but I want to schedule you for additional imaging to get a clearer picture of what we're dealing with." The words seemed to hang in the air between them, creating a moment of cognitive dissonance that Victoria struggled to process. She had entered the appointment expecting routine confirmation of her excellent health status, not a conversation about abnormal findings that required further investigation. Her mind immediately began calculating the implications for her work schedule, her plans with Robert, and the timeline they had established for starting their family. Dr. Chen explained that the area she had detected was small and mobile, characteristics that often indicated benign conditions rather than serious concerns. However, given Victoria's age and family history, the standard protocol required additional screening to definitively rule out any problematic developments. She would need to schedule a mammogram and ultrasound examination within the next 2 weeks, followed by a consultation to review the results and determine appropriate next steps. Victoria's practical mind immediately engaged with the logistics of scheduling these additional appointments around her existing professional obligations. She had 3 major client presentations scheduled for the following week, along with several deadline-driven projects that required her direct oversight. The timing felt inconvenient but manageable, assuming the additional tests would provide the reassurance that Dr. Chen clearly expected them to deliver. The conversation continued with Dr. Chen providing detailed explanations of what the upcoming tests would involve, emphasizing that the vast majority of such findings proved to be benign and required no treatment beyond continued monitoring. Victoria appreciated the thoroughness of these explanations while simultaneously feeling a growing sense of unease that she could not entirely rationalize. Her logical mind understood that early detection and preventative screening were positive developments, yet she found herself struggling with anxiety that seemed disproportionate to the clinical information she was receiving. Driving home from the appointment, Victoria experienced the surreal sensation of the familiar world appearing subtly different, as if someone had adjusted the lighting or changed the background music of her life. The tree-lined streets of Charleston looked the same, but her relationship to them felt altered by the introduction of uncertainty into what had been a predictable and controlled environment. She found herself noticing details that had previously escaped her attention: other women walking their dogs, working in their gardens, conducting the ordinary business of their lives without apparent concern about medical mysteries requiring urgent resolution. Robert was already at work when Victoria returned home, providing her with time to process the morning's developments before deciding how to present the information to him. She recognized that her tendency toward careful analysis and strategic planning could be either helpful or counterproductive in this situation, depending on whether the additional tests confirmed Dr. Chen's optimistic expectations or revealed more complex challenges requiring different responses. The mammography appointment was scheduled for the following Thursday at Charleston Women's Health Center, a facility Victoria had driven past numerous times without considering that she might someday require their services for anything beyond routine preventative care. The ultrasound examination would take place immediately afterward, allowing both procedures to be completed during a single morning that Victoria could block out of her work schedule without significant disruption to client commitments. Victoria decided to inform Robert about the situation that evening over dinner, framing the conversation around Dr. Chen's reassuring explanations while providing him with complete information about the timeline and procedures involved. Robert's initial reaction reflected his legal training, asking detailed questions about the medical rationale and seeking to understand the statistical probabilities associated with various potential outcomes. His analytical approach provided Victoria with comfort, reinforcing her own inclination to treat the situation as a problem requiring systematic investigation rather than a crisis demanding emotional response. Their discussion continued for nearly an hour, covering practical considerations like insurance coverage, potential impact on their family planning timeline, and how to manage the information sharing with their respective families. Robert suggested waiting until after the additional tests to mention anything to their parents, reasoning that preliminary information might cause unnecessary worry without providing useful details about actual next steps. Victoria spent the days leading up to her mammography appointment maintaining her normal routines while dealing with periodic waves of anxiety that seemed to arrive without warning. She found herself researching breast health topics online, despite recognizing that such research was likely to increase rather than decrease her stress levels. The information she discovered was both reassuring and concerning, with statistics indicating that the majority of abnormal findings proved benign, while simultaneously describing serious conditions that required immediate and aggressive treatment. Work provided a welcome distraction from her medical concerns, with several demanding projects requiring the kind of focused attention that prevented her mind from wandering to worst-case scenarios. Victoria threw herself into client campaigns with unusual intensity, working longer hours and taking on additional responsibilities that her staff could have handled independently. Her colleagues noticed this increased activity but attributed it to her natural perfectionism rather than any underlying anxiety about personal matters. The mammography appointment itself proved less uncomfortable than Victoria had anticipated, though the process felt more invasive and clinical than she had expected despite Dr. Chen's detailed explanations. The technician was professional and efficient, positioning Victoria for multiple images while maintaining conversation that helped distract from the awkwardness of the procedure. The ultrasound examination that followed provided Victoria with her first visual representation of the area that had prompted concern, though the grainy black and white images required expert interpretation to yield meaningful information. The radiologist who reviewed the results was a soft-spoken woman in her 50s, who had clearly developed effective techniques for delivering potentially concerning information to anxious patients. She explained that the imaging had revealed a solid mass approximately 2 centimeters in diameter, with characteristics that required tissue sampling to determine its exact nature. While many such masses proved to be benign, the size and density patterns visible in the images warranted a biopsy procedure to definitively establish the appropriate course of action. Victoria felt the ground shifting beneath her as the radiologist's words penetrated her consciousness. The possibility of serious illness had remained abstract until this moment, when medical imaging provided concrete evidence that something was growing inside her body without her awareness or permission. The careful life she had constructed suddenly felt fragile and temporary, vulnerable to forces beyond her control or understanding. The biopsy was scheduled for the following Tuesday, requiring Victoria to take additional time away from work during a particularly busy period. She found herself struggling to concentrate on client projects, while her mind repeatedly returned to the upcoming procedure and its potential implications. Robert accompanied her to the pre-biopsy consultation, asking detailed questions about the procedure and recovery timeline, while Victoria sat quietly, overwhelmed by the technical details and statistical probabilities that had suddenly become personally relevant. The actual biopsy procedure was completed under local anesthesia in an outpatient setting, taking approximately 45 minutes from preparation through recovery. Victoria experienced more discomfort than she had anticipated, both from the procedure itself and from the psychological impact of having tissue removed from her body for microscopic analysis. The samples would be sent to a specialized laboratory for comprehensive testing, with results available within 5 to 7 business days. Those waiting days proved to be among the most difficult of Victoria's adult life. She found herself unable to maintain her usual routines, alternating between periods of intense work focus and moments of paralyzing anxiety about potential outcomes. Sleep became elusive as her mind created elaborate scenarios involving various possible diagnoses and their implications for her career, her marriage, and her plans for starting a family. Robert attempted to provide support through practical assistance and logical reassurance, emphasizing the statistical likelihood of favorable results while helping Victoria maintain perspective about the preliminary nature of their current information. However, Victoria could sense his own underlying anxiety despite his efforts to project confidence and optimism. The uncertainty was affecting both of them, creating subtle changes in their interactions and daily routines that reflected the stress of waiting for information that would determine their immediate future. The call came on a Friday afternoon while Victoria was reviewing marketing materials for a client's upcoming product launch. Dr. Chen's voice was gentle but serious as she requested that Victoria and Robert come in for an appointment the following Monday morning to discuss the biopsy results. The fact that Dr. Chen wanted to deliver the information in person rather than over the phone provided Victoria with her first clear indication that the news would not be straightforward or entirely positive. That weekend passed in a surreal state of suspended animation, with Victoria and Robert attempting to maintain normal activities while both anticipating that their lives were about to change in fundamental ways. They cleaned the house, prepared meals, and attended their usual Sunday afternoon gallery visit. But these familiar rituals felt hollow and strange, as if they were actors performing roles in a play about their former lives. Monday morning arrived with the crisp clarity of early autumn in Charleston, the kind of weather that Victoria typically found energizing and optimistic. As they drove to Dr. Chen's office together, Victoria noticed details of the city with unusual intensity, as if she were seeing everything for the first time, or perhaps the last time, from her current perspective. The historic buildings, the carefully maintained gardens, the other people conducting their ordinary Monday morning business, all seemed both precious and distant, part of a world she might be leaving behind. Dr. Chen's expression as she greeted them in her office provided confirmation of Victoria's worst fears before any words were spoken. The biopsy results had revealed invasive ductal carcinoma, a type of breast cancer that required immediate and comprehensive treatment to prevent its spread to other parts of Victoria's body. The tumor was aggressive and had already begun affecting surrounding lymph nodes, indicating that the cancer had progressed beyond the earliest stages when treatment outcomes were most favorable. The diagnosis hit Victoria like a physical blow, creating a moment of complete cognitive disconnect as her mind struggled to process the transformation of abstract possibility into concrete medical reality. The woman who had entered Dr. Chen's office was healthy, successful, and planning for pregnancy. The woman who would leave was a cancer patient, facing months of chemotherapy, radiation, and surgical procedures, with uncertain outcomes and significant risks. Dr. Chen continued with detailed explanations of treatment protocols, survival statistics, and immediate next steps. But Victoria found herself unable to focus on the clinical information. Instead, she watched Robert's face as he absorbed the news, seeing shock and fear replace the confident optimism he had maintained throughout their weeks of waiting. In that moment, Victoria realized that her diagnosis would test not only her own strength and resilience, but also the foundation of their marriage and their shared vision for their future together. The oncology consultation took place in a medical complex that Victoria had never noticed, despite driving past it countless times during her 8 years living in Charleston. Dr. Michael Rodriguez possessed the kind of calm authority that inspired confidence while delivering information that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of her life. His office walls displayed medical degrees from prestigious institutions alongside patient artwork and photographs that suggested long-term relationships built through successful treatment outcomes. Dr. Rodriguez explained that Victoria's invasive ductal carcinoma was classified as stage 2, indicating that the cancer had begun spreading to nearby lymph nodes but had not yet reached distant organs. The tumor measured 2.3 centimeters and showed characteristics that responded well to aggressive treatment protocols, though the path ahead would require significant physical and emotional endurance. He outlined a comprehensive treatment plan involving neoadjuvant chemotherapy to shrink the tumor, followed by surgical removal and radiation therapy to eliminate any remaining cancer cells. The chemotherapy regimen would consist of 6 cycles administered over 18 weeks, with each treatment requiring approximately 4 hours in the infusion center, followed by several days of recovery as her body processed the powerful medications designed to target rapidly dividing cells. Dr. Rodriguez emphasized that modern chemotherapy protocols had improved dramatically in recent years, with supportive medications available to manage side effects and maintain quality of life throughout the treatment process. Victoria listened to these explanations with the analytical mindset that had served her well in business situations, taking notes and asking detailed questions about timelines, side effects, and success rates. However, beneath her composed exterior, she was grappling with the realization that her life would be dominated by medical appointments and treatment protocols for the next 6 months at minimum. The carefully planned existence she had constructed around professional achievements and domestic harmony was about to be replaced by a reality focused entirely on survival and recovery. Robert accompanied her to this consultation, demonstrating the supportive partnership that had characterized their relationship during previous challenges. He asked thoughtful questions about treatment logistics and long-term prognosis, researched insurance coverage details, and began investigating how to modify their home environment to accommodate her needs during chemotherapy. His responses reflected both genuine concern for her welfare and practical problem-solving skills that would prove essential during the difficult months ahead. The first chemotherapy session was scheduled for the following Tuesday, providing Victoria with 5 days to arrange her professional responsibilities and prepare both physically and mentally for the beginning of treatment. She spent this time meeting with her marketing firm's staff to delegate critical projects and establish communication protocols that would allow the business to function effectively during her extended absence. Her team responded with remarkable support and flexibility, volunteering to take on additional responsibilities and expressing confidence in their ability to maintain client relationships during her treatment period. Victoria also used this preparation time to research nutrition strategies, exercise modifications, and stress management techniques that could support her body's response to chemotherapy. She converted the guest bedroom into a comfortable recovery space equipped with books, entertainment systems, and easy access to bathroom facilities. Robert helped her stock the kitchen with foods that would be gentle on her digestive system while providing adequate nutrition during periods when her appetite might be compromised. The Charleston Cancer Center occupied a modern building designed to provide both medical excellence and emotional comfort for patients undergoing intensive treatments. The infusion suite featured individual treatment bays with comfortable recliners, personal television screens, and large windows offering views of carefully maintained gardens that created a peaceful atmosphere despite the serious medical procedures taking place inside. Victoria's first chemotherapy session began with detailed consultations with nursing staff who would monitor her responses and provide support throughout each treatment cycle. The nurses possessed extensive experience helping patients navigate the physical and emotional challenges of cancer treatment, offering practical advice about managing side effects while maintaining optimistic perspectives about successful outcomes. The actual infusion process required several hours as different medications were administered in specific sequences designed to maximize effectiveness while minimizing adverse reactions. Victoria used this time to respond to work emails, read business journals, and maintain connections with her professional world that provided continuity and purpose beyond her medical situation. She found that focusing on client projects and strategic planning helped distract her from the clinical environment and reminded her of the life she was fighting to preserve and rebuild. Robert remained with her throughout the first treatment, working on his laptop while staying available for conversation and support. His presence provided comfort and reassurance, demonstrating his commitment to their partnership during this challenging period. Other patients in the infusion suite were accompanied by family members and friends, creating an atmosphere of shared struggle and mutual encouragement that Victoria found surprisingly uplifting. The immediate side effects of chemotherapy proved manageable during the first few days following treatment, though Victoria experienced fatigue and mild nausea that required adjustments to her normal routines. She found that maintaining light physical activity and eating small, frequent meals helped minimize discomfort while supporting her body's recovery between treatment cycles. The anti-nausea medications prescribed by Dr. Rodriguez proved effective in controlling the digestive issues that had been her primary concern about chemotherapy. However, Victoria soon discovered that the psychological impact of beginning cancer treatment was more challenging than the physical side effects she had anticipated. The transformation from healthy, successful professional to cancer patient required significant mental adjustment as she learned to navigate medical appointments, insurance procedures, and treatment protocols that had previously been outside her experience. The loss of control over her schedule and physical condition created anxiety that she addressed through meditation practices and regular communication with a counselor specializing in cancer patient support. The second chemotherapy cycle, administered 3 weeks after the first, produced more noticeable side effects as the cumulative impact of the medications began affecting her energy levels and overall well-being. Victoria experienced increased fatigue that required longer recovery periods and modifications to her work schedule. She also began losing her hair, a visible reminder of her illness that challenged her sense of identity and professional image in ways she had not fully anticipated. Victoria addressed the hair loss proactively by purchasing several high-quality wigs that allowed her to maintain her professional appearance during client meetings and public events. She also invested in attractive head coverings for casual situations and gradually became comfortable with her changing appearance as a temporary but necessary aspect of her treatment journey. Robert provided consistent emotional support during this adjustment period, expressing admiration for her strength and maintaining physical affection that helped preserve her sense of feminine identity. The third chemotherapy treatment marked the halfway point in her neoadjuvant protocol, providing an opportunity for interim assessment of treatment effectiveness through imaging studies that would determine whether the current medications were successfully reducing tumor size. Victoria approached these follow-up tests with a mixture of anxiety and hope, recognizing that positive results would validate the difficult treatment process, while disappointing outcomes might require modifications to her therapeutic plan. The imaging results exceeded Dr. Rodriguez's expectations, showing significant tumor shrinkage and reduced lymph node involvement that indicated excellent response to the chemotherapy regimen. This positive feedback provided Victoria with renewed motivation to complete the remaining treatment cycles, despite the cumulative fatigue and side effects that made each session more challenging than the previous one. The objective evidence of treatment success reinforced her determination to maintain the disciplined approach that had characterized her response to cancer diagnosis and treatment. Victoria used the encouraging medical news to refocus on long-term planning and goal setting that extended beyond immediate treatment requirements. She began researching post-treatment recovery timelines, fertility preservation options, and strategies for returning to full professional capacity once her medical situation stabilized. These planning activities provided psychological benefits by reinforcing her expectation of successful treatment outcomes and her commitment to rebuilding the life that cancer had temporarily disrupted. The fourth and fifth chemotherapy cycles proved increasingly difficult, as cumulative side effects created persistent fatigue, occasional neuropathy in her hands and feet, and immune system suppression that required careful attention to infection prevention. Victoria found that maintaining social connections became more challenging as her energy levels decreased and her appearance changed, though she remained committed to attending important work meetings and maintaining relationships with key clients who had become invested in her recovery process. Robert's support remained consistent throughout this period, though Victoria began noticing subtle changes in his behavior that suggested the prolonged stress of her illness was affecting him more than he acknowledged. He appeared tired and distracted during conversations, spent longer hours at his law firm, and seemed less emotionally available for the kind of intimate communication that had previously characterized their relationship. Victoria attributed these changes to natural stress responses and assumed that his behavior would return to normal once her treatment concluded successfully. The sixth and final chemotherapy session represented a significant milestone in Victoria's treatment journey, marking the completion of the most intensive phase of her cancer therapy. The medical team celebrated this achievement with her, noting that her excellent response to treatment had positioned her well for the surgical and radiation phases that would complete her comprehensive cancer care. Victoria felt a sense of accomplishment tempered by awareness that significant challenges remained before she could consider herself fully recovered. Post-chemotherapy imaging confirmed continued tumor shrinkage and lymph node improvement, validating the effectiveness of the treatment protocol and providing optimism about surgical outcomes. Dr. Rodriguez scheduled her lumpectomy procedure for 3 weeks following her final chemotherapy session, allowing her body time to recover from the cumulative effects of the medications while maintaining momentum in her treatment timeline. Victoria spent this recovery period focusing on physical conditioning and nutritional support to optimize her body's readiness for surgery. She worked with a physical therapist to maintain strength and flexibility despite treatment-related fatigue, followed dietary guidelines designed to support immune function and healing, and practiced stress management techniques that would help her cope with surgical anxiety and recovery requirements. The lumpectomy procedure was performed by Dr. Sarah Williams, a breast surgeon with extensive experience in cancer cases who had coordinated closely with Dr. Rodriguez throughout Victoria's chemotherapy treatment. Dr. Williams explained that the surgery would remove the remaining tumor tissue along with several additional lymph nodes for pathological analysis that would provide definitive information about treatment success and determine the necessity for additional therapeutic interventions. Victoria approached the surgery with confidence, based on her excellent response to chemotherapy and the expertise of her medical team. Robert took time off work to provide support during her hospitalization and initial recovery period, demonstrating the partnership approach that had helped them navigate the challenges of her cancer diagnosis and treatment. The surgery proceeded without complications, and pathological analysis confirmed that no cancer cells remained in the removed tissue, indicating complete response to her chemotherapy treatment. Recovery from surgery required 2 weeks of limited activity, followed by gradual return to normal physical function over the subsequent month. Victoria used this period to catch up on business correspondence, reconnect with clients who had supported her throughout treatment, and begin planning her return to full professional capacity. The successful completion of surgery represented a major milestone in her cancer journey, though radiation therapy remained as the final component of her comprehensive treatment plan. Dr. Jennifer Park, the radiation oncologist who would oversee the final phase of Victoria's treatment, explained that radiation therapy would target any microscopic cancer cells that might remain in the surgical area, despite the excellent pathological results. The treatment would require daily sessions over 6 weeks, with each appointment lasting approximately 15 minutes and producing minimal immediate side effects compared to chemotherapy and surgery. Victoria viewed radiation therapy as the final challenge standing between her current status as a cancer patient and her return to the healthy, productive life she had been building before her diagnosis. The treatments were scheduled for early morning appointments that would allow her to return to work afterward, facilitating her gradual reintegration into professional responsibilities and normal daily routines. The completion of radiation therapy would mark the end of active cancer treatment and the beginning of long-term follow-up care designed to monitor for recurrence, while supporting her return to full health and normal life activities. Victoria had endured 9 months of intensive medical treatment with determination and grace, maintaining her professional responsibilities and personal relationships despite significant physical and emotional challenges. However, she was about to discover that surviving cancer would prove to be only the first test of her strength and resilience, as the person she trusted most in the world was preparing to abandon her at the moment when her victory over cancer should have been celebrated as a triumph of their partnership and shared commitment to overcoming life's most difficult challenges. The completion of Victoria's radiation therapy should have marked a celebration of triumph over adversity, yet the atmosphere in their Charleston home had grown increasingly strained throughout the final weeks of her treatment. Robert's behavior had evolved from supportive concern to detached tolerance, creating an emotional distance that Victoria initially attributed to his own process of coping with the stress of her illness. She recognized that partners of cancer patients often struggled with their own psychological adjustments, and assumed that his withdrawal was temporary, requiring patience and understanding rather than confrontation. Victoria's post-treatment follow-up appointments with Dr. Rodriguez provided consistently positive news about her recovery progress and excellent prognosis for long-term survival. The pathology reports from her surgery had confirmed complete elimination of cancer cells, while her most recent imaging studies showed no evidence of remaining disease. Her energy levels were gradually returning to normal, her hair had begun growing back with renewed thickness and slight wave that she found unexpectedly attractive, and her overall health metrics indicated successful restoration of her immune system and physical strength. However, these medical victories felt hollow when shared with Robert, whose responses to positive news had become perfunctory rather than genuinely celebratory. Victoria noticed that he avoided physical intimacy, claimed fatigue when she suggested activities they had previously enjoyed together, and spent increasing amounts of time at his law firm on projects that seemed to require unusual evening and weekend attention. When she attempted to discuss their relationship dynamics, Robert deflected her concerns with vague explanations about work pressure and his own need for emotional processing time. The changes in Robert's behavior created profound confusion for Victoria, who had expected that successful completion of cancer treatment would restore their previous relationship patterns and allow them to resume planning for the future they had envisioned before her diagnosis. Instead, she found herself living with someone who seemed to view her recovery as an inconvenience rather than a relief, someone whose emotional engagement had diminished precisely when she most needed reassurance about their partnership and shared commitment to rebuilding their life together. Victoria's attempts to address these relationship concerns directly met with resistance that took various forms depending on Robert's mood and the specific issues she raised. Sometimes he denied that any significant changes had occurred, suggesting that her perceptions were influenced by treatment-related fatigue or emotional sensitivity that would resolve with additional recovery time. Other times he acknowledged feeling distant but attributed this to legitimate concerns about her long-term health prospects and his own struggle to process the fear and uncertainty that her illness had created for both of them. These conversations followed predictable patterns that left Victoria feeling unheard and increasingly isolated within her own marriage. Robert would initially engage with her concerns in ways that seemed constructive, acknowledging the validity of her observations and expressing willingness to work on improving their communication and emotional connection. However, these discussions invariably concluded without concrete commitments to behavioral changes or specific strategies for addressing the underlying issues that were creating distance between them. Victoria began recognizing that Robert's withdrawal was not merely a temporary stress response, but rather a fundamental shift in his perception of their relationship and her value as a partner. The realization that her cancer experience had somehow diminished his attraction to her, or his confidence in their future together, created a level of emotional pain that rivaled the physical discomfort she had endured during chemotherapy. The betrayal felt particularly acute because it violated her assumptions about marriage as a partnership designed to provide mutual support during life's most challenging circumstances. The professional counselor Victoria had worked with during her cancer treatment had prepared her for potential relationship difficulties that often emerged following serious illness, explaining that couples frequently struggled with readjustment processes that required time and intentional effort from both partners. However, the counselor's guidance had focused on strategies for rebuilding intimacy and communication when both partners remained committed to preserving their relationship, scenarios that assumed mutual investment in working through temporary difficulties rather than one partner's fundamental disengagement from the marriage itself. Victoria's marketing firm had continued operating successfully during her treatment period, with her staff demonstrating remarkable capability and dedication that allowed the business to maintain client relationships and even acquire several new accounts during her absence. Her gradual return to full professional responsibilities provided welcome distraction from her personal concerns while reinforcing her sense of competence and value in contexts beyond her marriage. The positive feedback from clients and colleagues created stark contrast with Robert's diminished appreciation for her strengths and contributions. The business success also reminded Victoria of her capacity for leadership and problem-solving under pressure, qualities that had enabled her to navigate cancer treatment with determination and grace, while maintaining professional obligations throughout the process. These achievements represented objective evidence of her resilience and capability, contradicting any suggestions that her illness had fundamentally weakened her or reduced her potential for future accomplishments. The discrepancy between her professional recognition and Robert's personal withdrawal highlighted the specific nature of his changed attitude toward their relationship. Victoria spent considerable time analyzing her own behavior and responses during the cancer treatment period, searching for actions or attitudes that might have contributed to Robert's emotional distance. She questioned whether her focus on maintaining professional responsibilities had prevented her from adequately acknowledging his needs for support and attention during her illness. She wondered whether her determination to present a strong, capable image had inadvertently excluded him from her emotional processing or made him feel unnecessary to her recovery success. However, these self-examinations consistently led to the conclusion that her behavior had been reasonable and appropriate given the circumstances she faced. She had explicitly requested his support, expressed gratitude for his assistance, and attempted to maintain open communication about her fears and needs throughout the treatment process. Her efforts to preserve normalcy in their relationship had been motivated by consideration for his comfort, rather than indifference to his concerns, and her professional commitments had been managed in ways that minimized impact on their shared time and activities. The realization that Robert's withdrawal was not based on legitimate grievances about her behavior forced Victoria to consider alternative explanations for his changed attitude toward their marriage. The possibility that he had simply lost romantic interest during her illness, perhaps due to physical changes from treatment or his own inability to cope with serious life challenges, created devastating implications for her understanding of their relationship's foundation and his character as a partner and person. Victoria also began recognizing signs that Robert's emotional withdrawal might involve external factors beyond his individual processing of her illness and recovery. His extended work hours seemed excessive even by the demanding standards of his law firm, and his explanations of specific projects requiring unusual time commitments lacked the detail and authenticity that had characterized his previous communications about professional responsibilities. His reluctance to engage in physical intimacy persisted despite medical clearance for normal activities and her own interest in restoring that aspect of their relationship. These observations suggested the possibility that Robert's distance was not merely about his reaction to her cancer experience, but might involve other relationships or commitments that were competing for his attention and emotional investment. Victoria resisted pursuing this line of thinking because the implications seemed too devastating to contemplate, yet she could not entirely dismiss the evidence that his behavior reflected more than individual stress management or relationship adjustment difficulties. The isolation created by Robert's withdrawal was compounded by Victoria's reluctance to discuss her marital concerns with family members or friends who had provided support during her cancer treatment. These relationships had been focused on her medical situation and recovery process, creating expectations that successful completion of treatment would restore normalcy to all aspects of her life. Victoria felt embarrassed about experiencing relationship problems, precisely when she should have been celebrating health and renewed possibilities for the future. Furthermore, Victoria recognized that her cancer experience had changed her own perspective on relationships and life priorities in ways that might be influencing her expectations of Robert and their marriage. Her confrontation with mortality had clarified the importance of authentic connection and mutual support, making her less tolerant of superficial interactions or relationships that lacked genuine emotional engagement. The question of whether Robert had failed to meet reasonable expectations or whether her standards had become unrealistic added complexity to her assessment of their situation. The financial implications of potential relationship difficulties also weighed heavily on Victoria's considerations about how to address her concerns with Robert. Their shared mortgage, business investments, and integrated financial planning created practical complications that would make separation or divorce significantly more challenging than simple emotional disengagement. Victoria had invested considerable resources in their shared life, including the home renovation projects and business development activities that had been central to their future planning before her cancer diagnosis. Victoria's professional success and independent income provided her with options that many women in similar situations might lack. Yet the prospect of dismantling their shared life felt overwhelming when combined with her ongoing recovery from cancer treatment. The energy required to address relationship conflicts seemed enormous compared to her current capacity for managing additional stress and complex decision-making processes. The temptation to avoid confrontation and hope for gradual improvement in their situation felt safer than demanding accountability from Robert for his changed behavior. However, Victoria's business experience had taught her that avoiding difficult conversations typically allowed problems to escalate rather than resolve naturally over time. Her success in managing client relationships and professional challenges had been built on direct communication and systematic problem-solving approaches that addressed issues promptly rather than hoping they would disappear through neglect. The same principles that had guided her professional development suggested that her marriage required honest assessment and decisive action rather than passive acceptance of deteriorating conditions. The internal conflict between her desire to preserve their relationship and her recognition that Robert's commitment had fundamentally changed created a state of psychological tension that began affecting her physical recovery and emotional well-being. Victoria found herself experiencing anxiety symptoms that resembled her reactions to cancer treatment, including difficulty sleeping, decreased appetite, and persistent worry that interfered with her ability to concentrate on work responsibilities or enjoy activities that had previously provided satisfaction and relaxation. The irony that relationship stress was undermining her recovery from a life-threatening illness was not lost on Victoria, who recognized that she had survived cancer only to face the possibility that her marriage would not survive her survival. The realization that Robert's support had been conditional rather than unconditional forced her to reconsider fundamental assumptions about their partnership and his character, assumptions that had provided emotional security throughout their relationship, and particularly during her medical crisis. As Victoria approached the 6-month anniversary of completing her cancer treatment, she faced the recognition that she could not continue living in a state of suspended animation, waiting for Robert to return to his previous level of engagement, or provide explanations for his withdrawal that would allow her to address whatever concerns had created their current difficulties. The time had come to demand honest communication about their relationship's future, regardless of whether that conversation would confirm her worst fears about his changed commitment to their marriage and shared life. The confrontation Victoria had been avoiding came unexpectedly on a Thursday evening in March, 6 months after her final radiation treatment. She had returned home from a particularly successful client presentation to find Robert sitting at their kitchen table with documents spread before him and an expression that immediately conveyed the gravity of what was about to occur. The papers appeared to be legal documents, and Victoria's initial assumption was that they related to some complex case he was handling at his firm, until she noticed her own name printed clearly on several of the pages. Robert's demeanor was controlled and distant, as he explained that he had been consulting with a divorce attorney and had prepared preliminary paperwork for legal separation. His voice carried the same professional tone he used when discussing business matters with clients, devoid of the emotional connection that should have characterized such a momentous conversation between married partners. He explained that her cancer experience had forced him to confront fundamental questions about their compatibility and his own life goals, conclusions that had led him to determine that their marriage could not continue. The words struck Victoria with physical force, creating a moment of complete disorientation as her mind struggled to process the transformation of her worst fears into concrete reality. The careful life she had rebuilt following cancer treatment was being dismantled by the person she had trusted most completely, at the precise moment when she had expected to celebrate her recovery and resume planning for their shared future. The betrayal felt incomprehensible in its timing and devastating in its implications for everything she had believed about their relationship. Robert continued his explanation with clinical detachment, outlining his perspective on their marriage difficulties and his assessment that reconciliation was neither possible nor desirable. He described feeling overwhelmed by the responsibility of supporting her through illness and uncertainty about his ability to handle similar challenges that might arise in the future. His words revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of marriage as a partnership designed to provide mutual support during life's inevitable difficulties, suggesting instead that he viewed their relationship as a recreational arrangement that should be terminated when circumstances became demanding. Victoria listened to his justifications with growing recognition that Robert's decision was not based on legitimate relationship concerns that could be addressed through communication and effort, but rather on character limitations that prevented him from honoring the commitments he had made during their wedding ceremony. His inability to provide support during her medical crisis reflected deficiencies in his capacity for love and loyalty that would have emerged eventually under different stressful circumstances, making their current situation inevitable regardless of her specific health challenges. The conversation continued for nearly 2 hours, as Victoria attempted to understand Robert's reasoning and explore possibilities for preserving their marriage through counseling or other interventions. However, his responses made clear that his decision was final and had been reached through extended deliberation rather than impulsive reaction to immediate stress. He had consulted legal counsel, researched divorce procedures, and developed timelines for property division that indicated months of planning conducted without her knowledge or participation. Robert's betrayal was compounded by his revelation that he had been involved with another woman for approximately 3 months, a relationship that had developed while Victoria was completing her radiation treatments and focusing on recovery from cancer. The other woman was a paralegal at his law firm named Jennifer Walsh, someone Victoria had met briefly at office social events and had considered friendly but unremarkable. The timing of their relationship's beginning coincided precisely with the period when Robert had become most emotionally distant from Victoria, providing clear evidence that his withdrawal had been motivated by romantic interest elsewhere rather than stress about her medical situation. The discovery that Robert had been conducting an affair during her cancer recovery period created layers of emotional devastation that extended far beyond the pain of learning about their marriage's termination. Victoria realized that while she had been focusing her energy on healing and rebuilding their life together, Robert had been investing his emotional resources in developing a relationship with someone else, someone who represented everything Victoria could no longer provide due to her medical circumstances and ongoing recovery needs. Jennifer Walsh was approximately 10 years younger than Victoria, possessed the kind of effortless health and vitality that cancer treatment had temporarily stolen from Victoria's own appearance, and had never faced the kind of serious life challenges that revealed character depth and resilience. Victoria understood that Jennifer represented an escape from the complexity and responsibility that marriage to Victoria required, offering Robert the illusion of returning to a simpler time when relationships were based on attraction and convenience, rather than commitment and mutual support through difficulty. Robert concluded their conversation by explaining his timeline for moving out of their shared home and initiating formal divorce proceedings. He had already secured temporary housing and had begun transferring his personal belongings to avoid prolonged cohabitation that might create additional emotional difficulty for both parties. His efficiency in planning their separation demonstrated the same organizational skills that had made him successful in his legal career, applied now to the systematic dissolution of their marriage, with minimal regard for Victoria's emotional needs or recovery timeline. Victoria spent the remainder of that evening and the following day in a state of shock that resembled her initial reaction to receiving cancer diagnosis, characterized by disbelief, numbness, and inability to process the full implications of her dramatically changed circumstances. The home that had represented security and shared accomplishment now felt like a museum of failed dreams, filled with furniture they had selected together and photographs documenting happier periods of their relationship that now seemed naive and temporary. The practical implications of divorce began to occupy Victoria's analytical mind as she moved beyond initial emotional reactions towards systematic assessment of her situation and options. The house would need to be sold or refinanced if she chose to maintain ownership independently. Business assets and retirement accounts would require division according to South Carolina's equitable distribution laws. Professional relationships that had developed through their marriage would need to be navigated carefully to avoid complications for her marketing firm's client base and reputation. However, the most significant challenge Victoria faced was not financial or logistical but rather psychological, involving the need to rebuild her sense of identity and self-worth, following betrayal by the person whose opinion had mattered most to her throughout their relationship. Robert's abandonment during her recovery period suggested that her value as a partner had been contingent on her health and appearance rather than her character and capabilities, forcing her to question fundamental assumptions about her desirability and worth as a person. The timing of Robert's departure, occurring precisely when Victoria should have been celebrating her triumph over cancer and planning for renewed possibilities, created a cruel irony that challenged her ability to appreciate her medical recovery as the victory it represented. Instead of moving forward with confidence and optimism about her future, she found herself starting over completely at age 34, facing the prospect of rebuilding her personal life while managing the ongoing demands of her professional responsibilities and continued medical follow-up appointments. Victoria's initial impulse was to retreat from social connections and professional commitments that might require her to explain her changed circumstances or maintain appearances during a period when her emotional resources were depleted. However, her marketing firm required consistent leadership and client attention that could not be postponed while she processed personal difficulties. The necessity of maintaining professional obligations provided structure and purpose that prevented complete withdrawal, while demonstrating her continued capability despite the chaos in her personal life. During this period of acute crisis, Victoria encountered Drive. Margaret Hawthorne, a clinical psychologist who specialized in supporting cancer survivors through relationship and identity transitions that often accompanied recovery from serious illness. Dr. Hawthorne had been recommended by Dr. Rodriguez, who had observed similar patterns among patients whose marriages failed to survive cancer treatment and recovery. Their initial consultation was scheduled as a single session to address immediate coping strategies, but developed into an ongoing therapeutic relationship that would prove transformational for Victoria's healing process. Dr. Hawthorne possessed both professional expertise and personal experience with cancer survivorship that enabled her to understand Victoria's situation from multiple perspectives. She had completed her own treatment for lymphoma 15 years earlier, experiencing many of the same challenges related to changed relationships and altered sense of identity that Victoria was currently facing. Her dual perspective as both medical professional and cancer survivor provided credibility and empathy that facilitated Victoria's willingness to engage openly with difficult emotional work. The therapeutic relationship began with practical strategies for managing the immediate stress of divorce proceedings while maintaining professional responsibilities and supporting her continued physical recovery. Dr. Hawthorne helped Victoria develop coping mechanisms for handling social situations that might involve questions about Robert's absence, techniques for managing anxiety related to financial uncertainty, and approaches to maintaining self-care routines that supported both emotional stability and physical health during this challenging transition period. However, Hawthorne's most significant contribution to Victoria's healing involved challenging the narrative of failure and inadequacy that Robert's abandonment had created in Victoria's understanding of herself and her circumstances. Through careful questioning and reframing exercises, Dr. Hawthorne helped Victoria recognize that surviving cancer while maintaining professional success and personal integrity represented extraordinary achievement rather than the personal failure that Robert's departure might suggest. Dr. Hawthorne introduced Victoria to research about post-traumatic growth, a psychological phenomenon in which individuals who face serious life challenges often develop enhanced resilience, deeper appreciation for relationships and experiences, and clearer understanding of their own values and priorities. The cancer experience that Robert had viewed as devastating limitation could be reframed as evidence of Victoria's strength and capacity for handling adversity with grace and determination. The therapeutic work also involved examining Victoria's relationship patterns and expectations to identify ways in which her marriage to Robert might have been limiting her personal growth and self-expression, rather than supporting her fullest potential. Dr. Hawthorne helped Victoria recognize that her accommodating approach to Robert's needs and preferences had sometimes involved suppressing aspects of her own personality and ambitions, creating a dynamic that prevented authentic intimacy and mutual respect from developing fully. Through these therapeutic conversations, Victoria began to understand that Robert's departure, while painful and poorly timed, might ultimately represent an opportunity for personal growth and relationship development that would not have been possible within the constraints of their marriage. His inability to provide support during her most challenging period revealed character limitations that would have created ongoing difficulties and disappointments had their relationship continued under different circumstances. Dr. Hawthorne also introduced Victoria to other cancer survivors who had faced similar relationship challenges, creating opportunities for peer support and shared learning that reduced her sense of isolation and abnormality. These connections demonstrated that relationship changes following serious illness were common rather than exceptional, often leading to stronger partnerships with more compatible individuals who possess the emotional maturity necessary for authentic long-term commitment. The support group meetings became a regular part of Victoria's weekly routine, providing both practical advice about navigating divorce proceedings and emotional encouragement from individuals who understood the unique challenges of rebuilding life after cancer. The group members included people at various stages of recovery and relationship transition, offering Victoria perspective on the long-term possibilities for happiness and fulfillment that seemed impossible to envision during her immediate crisis period. Victoria's work with Dr. Hawthorne and participation in the support group began to shift her perspective on Robert's abandonment from personal catastrophe toward recognition of his departure as evidence of incompatibility that had been masked by their previous life circumstances. The cancer experience had revealed fundamental differences in their characters and values that would have emerged eventually under different forms of stress, making their divorce inevitable, regardless of its specific timing and circumstances. This reframing process allowed Victoria to begin grieving the loss of her marriage, while simultaneously recognizing that Robert's decision had freed her from a relationship that was limiting her potential for authentic connection and personal growth. The pain of betrayal remained significant, but it was balanced by growing awareness that she possessed qualities of strength, resilience, and integrity that deserved recognition and appreciation from partners capable of providing genuine support during both challenging and successful periods of life. The decision to file for divorce came to Victoria not as a dramatic revelation, but as a quiet acceptance of reality that emerged during her fourth session with Dr. Hawthorne. She had spent weeks oscillating between hope for reconciliation and recognition that Robert's commitment to ending their marriage was absolute. The therapeutic work had helped her understand that continuing to pursue a relationship with someone who had abandoned her during her most vulnerable period would represent a betrayal of her own worth and dignity rather than evidence of love or commitment. Victoria contacted Rebecca Martinez, a family law attorney whose reputation for handling complex divorces with discretion and strategic thinking had been recommended by several professional contacts. The initial consultation revealed that Robert had already engaged legal counsel and begun preliminary asset evaluation, confirming that his decision had been planned systematically rather than reached through emotional impulse. Rebecca's assessment of their situation indicated that Victoria's position was stronger than she had initially assumed, particularly regarding business assets and professional income that had grown significantly during their marriage. The legal proceedings required Victoria to compile comprehensive documentation of their shared assets, business investments, and financial obligations that had accumulated during their 5-year marriage. This process forced her to confront the substantial life they had built together, while simultaneously recognizing how much of their apparent partnership had been constructed through her initiative and resources rather than truly collaborative effort. The analysis revealed patterns of financial contribution and decision-making that demonstrated Victoria's primary role in their economic success and stability. Rebecca's strategy focused on protecting Victoria's business interests and ensuring equitable division of assets based on actual contributions rather than theoretical partnership assumptions. The marketing firm represented Victoria's most valuable asset and required careful legal protection to prevent Robert from claiming ownership percentages that would compromise her ability to maintain operational control. The complexity of separating business assets from marital property necessitated detailed valuation processes and financial analysis that occupied several weeks of intensive preparation. Victoria discovered during this period that Robert's affair with Jennifer Walsh had been more extensive than his initial disclosure had suggested. Financial records revealed expenditures for travel, dining, and gifts that had been funded through their joint accounts while Victoria was undergoing cancer treatment. The evidence of his systematic deception during her most challenging period provided additional legal grounds for favorable settlement terms, while reinforcing her decision to pursue complete separation rather than attempting reconciliation. The emotional work of accepting divorce as inevitable required Victoria to grieve not only the loss of her marriage, but also the future she had envisioned with Robert before her cancer diagnosis. Their plans for starting a family, expanding their professional achievements, and building long-term financial security had all been predicated on partnership assumptions that Robert's abandonment had revealed to be false. Dr. Hawthorne helped Victoria process this grief, while maintaining focus on the opportunities for authentic relationships and personal growth that divorce would create. Victoria's approach to handling the divorce proceedings reflected the same strategic thinking and systematic preparation that had characterized her response to cancer treatment. She maintained detailed records of all communications with Robert and his attorney, documented instances of his deceptive behavior during their marriage, and developed comprehensive proposals for asset division that protected her interests while demonstrating reasonable willingness to negotiate. Her professional experience in managing complex client relationships proved valuable in navigating legal procedures and maintaining composure during emotionally charged discussions. The support group facilitated by Dr. Hawthorne provided Victoria with perspectives from other cancer survivors who had faced similar relationship challenges, many of whom had ultimately found that divorce led to stronger partnerships with more compatible individuals. These stories offered hope for future happiness while validating her experience of betrayal and loss. The group members had developed successful careers, meaningful relationships, and fulfilling personal lives following divorce, demonstrating that ending an incompatible marriage could represent the beginning of more authentic and satisfying life circumstances. Victoria's professional responsibilities continued to demand significant attention during the divorce proceedings, requiring her to maintain client relationships and business operations while managing legal requirements and emotional processing. Her marketing firm had expanded its client base during her cancer treatment period, with several major accounts specifically requesting continued partnership based on their confidence in her strategic capabilities and personal integrity. The professional recognition provided objective validation of her worth and competence that contrasted sharply with Robert's diminished appreciation for her qualities. The process of separating shared belongings from their Charleston home proved emotionally challenging, as Victoria confronted physical reminders of their relationship history and shared experiences. items they had selected together for their domestic life now required individual ownership decisions that highlighted the dissolution of their partnership. Victoria chose to retain pieces that reflected her personal taste and practical needs, while allowing Robert to remove items that held particular significance for him or would be necessary for establishing his separate household. Victoria decided to remain in their Charleston home initially, both for emotional continuity and practical considerations related to her business operations and established professional networks. The house required refinancing to remove Robert's ownership interest, a process that demonstrated her strong individual creditworthiness and income capacity. The successful completion of this financial transaction provided concrete evidence of her ability to maintain the lifestyle and security she had built through her own efforts, rather than dependence on marital partnership. The formal divorce settlement was reached through mediation rather than contentious litigation, reflecting Victoria's preference for efficient resolution and her strong negotiating position based on documented evidence of asset contributions and Robert's marital misconduct. The agreement provided Victoria with primary ownership of the marketing firm, retention of the Charleston home, and favorable division of investment accounts and retirement assets. Robert's settlement included his law firm partnership interest, personal vehicles, and approximately 40% of their liquid savings, terms that reflected equitable distribution while protecting Victoria's business interests and financial security. The finalization of divorce proceedings occurred 8 months after Robert's initial revelation of his intentions, a timeline that allowed Victoria to process the emotional aspects of their separation while maintaining professional stability and personal dignity throughout the legal process. The completion of formal procedures created a sense of closure that enabled Victoria to focus fully on rebuilding her life according to her own values and priorities, rather than attempting to accommodate Robert's preferences or expectations. Dr. Hawthorne's therapeutic support during this transition period helped Victoria recognize that her divorce represented an opportunity for personal growth and self-discovery that had been constrained within her marriage to Robert. Their relationship had required her to moderate certain aspects of her personality and ambitions, to maintain harmony with someone whose emotional capacity was limited by his own insecurities and character development. The freedom to express herself authentically without considering Robert's reactions or approval created possibilities for relationships and experiences that had been previously unavailable. Victoria's 35th birthday approached during the final stages of divorce proceedings, marking not only a personal milestone, but also the completion of her transition from married cancer patient to independent cancer survivor, with restored health and renewed possibilities for future achievement. She planned a modest celebration with close friends and family members, who had provided support throughout her medical treatment and divorce proceedings, focusing on gratitude for her recovery and optimism about the opportunities ahead. The birthday planning process reminded Victoria of personal interests and social connections that had been neglected during her marriage to Robert, whose preferences had gradually influenced their social activities and leisure pursuits in ways that limited her exposure to new experiences and relationships. Her independence created space for exploring artistic interests, travel destinations, and professional opportunities that reflected her individual tastes, rather than compromises necessary for marital harmony. Victoria's work with Dr. Hawthorne had evolved from crisis intervention to personal development coaching, focused on identifying goals and values that would guide her decision-making in all aspects of her reconstructed life. The therapeutic relationship had provided a safe space for honest self-examination and emotional processing that enabled Victoria to approach her future with clarity about her strengths, preferences, and non-negotiable requirements for personal and professional relationships. The Cancer Survivor Support Group had become an integral part of Victoria's weekly routine, providing ongoing encouragement and practical advice while offering opportunities for her to support other individuals facing similar challenges. Her experience with both cancer recovery and divorce had equipped her with insights and coping strategies that proved valuable for group members dealing with relationship difficulties following serious illness. The mutual support dynamic reinforced her sense of purpose and contribution beyond her professional achievements. Victoria's marketing firm continued to thrive under her independent leadership, with several clients specifically commenting on her renewed energy and creative approach to campaign development following her personal transitions. The professional success provided financial security and personal satisfaction while demonstrating her capability for managing complex responsibilities during periods of significant personal change. Her business achievements offered objective evidence that divorce had not diminished her capacity for success, but rather had removed constraints that had been limiting her full potential. The physical and emotional recovery from cancer treatment had progressed to complete restoration of Victoria's health and vitality, with follow-up medical appointments consistently confirming excellent prognosis and no evidence of disease recurrence. Her energy levels had returned to pre-diagnosis standards, her hair had grown back with attractive new texture and color, and her overall fitness had been enhanced through the health-conscious lifestyle practices she had adopted during treatment. The visual evidence of her recovery provided daily reminders of her strength and resilience. Victoria's social circle had expanded during her divorce proceedings to include new friendships developed through professional networking, community activities, and the support group relationships that had provided encouragement during her most challenging period. These connections were based on mutual respect and shared interests, rather than the coupled social dynamics that had characterized her marriage to Robert. The authentic relationships offered emotional support and intellectual stimulation that enriched her daily experience and provided foundation for continued personal growth. As Victoria approached her 35th birthday and the complete resolution of her divorce proceedings, she reflected on the dramatic transformation her life had undergone during the previous 18 months. The journey from cancer diagnosis through successful treatment, marital betrayal, and independent recovery had revealed personal strengths and capabilities she had not previously recognized or fully developed. The challenges that had initially seemed devastating had ultimately created opportunities for authentic self-expression and meaningful achievement that exceeded her previous aspirations. The woman who had been married to Robert and focused on accommodating his preferences while managing her own professional responsibilities had evolved into someone whose decisions were guided by clear understanding of her values and unwavering commitment to her own well-being and growth. The independence that divorce had initially seemed to threaten had become a source of strength and possibility that enabled her to pursue relationships and opportunities aligned with her authentic self, rather than compromised versions designed to maintain compatibility with an incompatible partner. Victoria's 35th birthday would mark not only the completion of her transition to independent life, but also the activation of financial resources that would demonstrate the magnitude of Robert's mistake in abandoning someone whose worth extended far beyond anything he had understood or appreciated during their marriage together. Victoria's first year as a divorced woman presented a series of challenges that tested her resilience and revealed the true character of people within her personal and professional circles. The immediate aftermath of divorce finalization brought unexpected complications, as certain mutual friends struggled to navigate loyalty divisions between Victoria and Robert, while others revealed their genuine support through consistent presence and practical assistance during her transition period. The most significant test emerged through her marketing firm, when 3 major clients expressed concerns about working with a business owner who was managing personal difficulties that might affect her professional capabilities. These clients had developed relationships with both Victoria and Robert through social networking events where their marriage had been presented as evidence of stability and successful lifestyle management. The dissolution of their partnership created uncertainty about Victoria's ability to maintain the same level of strategic thinking and creative output that had characterized her previous work. Victoria addressed these professional challenges by implementing systematic communication strategies that demonstrated continued excellence in client service while maintaining appropriate boundaries regarding her personal circumstances. She scheduled individual meetings with concerned clients to address their specific questions about business continuity and service delivery, providing detailed project timelines and performance metrics that illustrated her firm's consistent track record despite her personal transitions. The client retention efforts required Victoria to develop new skills in reputation management and stakeholder communication that extended beyond her previous marketing expertise. She learned to present herself as someone whose personal experiences with adversity had enhanced rather than diminished her strategic capabilities, using her cancer recovery and successful divorce navigation as evidence of problem-solving abilities and resilience under pressure that would benefit client relationships and campaign development. One particularly challenging situation involved the loss of Meridian Financial Services, a wealth management firm that had been among Victoria's earliest and most profitable accounts. The company's managing partner, Douglas Whitfield, had been a friend of Robert's through law school connections and felt uncomfortable continuing the business relationship following their divorce. Whitfield's decision was communicated through formal business correspondence that cited budget restructuring rather than acknowledging the personal factors that influenced his choice. The loss of Meridian Financial represented approximately 15% of Victoria's annual revenue and required immediate strategic response to prevent cash flow difficulties and maintain business stability. Victoria developed a comprehensive client acquisition plan that leveraged her expanded network of cancer survivor advocates and divorce support community members to identify potential new accounts within healthcare, legal services, and personal development sectors. The business development efforts revealed unexpected opportunities within market segments that had not been accessible during her marriage to Robert. Healthcare organizations appreciated Victoria's personal experience with cancer treatment and recovery, recognizing that her insights into patient perspectives and family dynamics would enhance their marketing communications. Legal services firms sought her expertise in developing sensitive messaging for divorce and family law practices that required careful attention to emotional dynamics and client vulnerability. Victoria's work with Charleston Women's Health Center, where she had received her cancer treatment, evolved into a comprehensive rebranding initiative that positioned the organization as a leader in comprehensive women's healthcare rather than merely a medical service provider. The campaign development process allowed Victoria to integrate her personal experience with professional expertise, creating marketing materials that resonated authentically with women facing serious health challenges while maintaining medical accuracy and professional credibility. The success of the women's health marketing campaign generated referrals within the healthcare sector that more than compensated for the revenue lost through Meridian Financial and similar client departures. Victoria discovered that her personal experience with medical crisis had created authentic expertise in healthcare marketing that was highly valued by organizations seeking to connect meaningfully with patients and families during vulnerable periods. However, the professional growth was accompanied by personal challenges as Victoria navigated social situations where her divorced status created awkwardness among couples who had previously included her and Robert in their social activities. Several longtime friendships became strained as mutual acquaintances struggled to maintain relationships with both parties, or expressed discomfort with Victoria's presence at gatherings where married couples predominated. The social isolation that resulted from these relationship changes initially felt devastating, as Victoria realized that many of her friendships had been based on coupled social dynamics rather than individual connections. The discovery that her social network had been more fragile than she had understood forced her to develop new relationship patterns and seek community connections that were based on shared interests and values rather than marital status compatibility. Victoria's engagement with the Cancer Survivor Support Group evolved from receiving assistance to providing leadership as newer members joined who were facing similar relationship challenges following their medical treatments. Her experience with both cancer recovery and divorce proceedings provided valuable perspective for individuals who were struggling with changed relationships and identity questions that often accompanied serious illness survival. The mentoring responsibilities within the support group revealed leadership capabilities that Victoria had not previously developed in her professional or personal contexts. Her ability to provide practical guidance while offering emotional support demonstrated communication skills and empathetic understanding that enhanced her effectiveness in business-client relationships as well as personal interactions. Dr. Hawthorne encouraged Victoria to consider expanding her involvement in cancer advocacy beyond the support group participation, to include speaking engagements and educational initiatives that could benefit larger audiences while providing additional purpose and professional development opportunities. The suggestion initially seemed overwhelming given her existing business responsibilities and ongoing personal adjustments, but Victoria recognized the potential for meaningful contribution to communities facing challenges she had successfully navigated. Victoria's first speaking engagement occurred at a professional development conference for healthcare marketing specialists, where she presented a session on developing authentic patient communications based on lived experience with serious illness. The presentation combined her marketing expertise with personal insights about patient perspectives, creating content that was both professionally valuable and emotionally compelling for audience members who worked in healthcare settings. The positive response to her conference presentation led to additional speaking opportunities within healthcare organizations, professional associations, and community groups focused on cancer support and women's empowerment. Victoria discovered that her combination of business success, cancer survivorship, and divorce recovery created a unique perspective that resonated with diverse audiences facing various types of life challenges and transition periods. The speaking engagements provided Victoria with additional revenue streams while expanding her professional network and personal sense of purpose beyond her marketing firm operations. The activities also demonstrated her capability for managing multiple responsibilities and developing new skills during periods of significant personal change, reinforcing her confidence in her ability to handle whatever challenges might arise in her reconstructed life. Meanwhile, Robert's relationship with Jennifer Walsh had progressed to cohabitation in a downtown Charleston apartment that reflected their shared preference for modern convenience over the historic charm that Victoria had valued in their former home. Mutual acquaintances reported that Robert appeared happier and more relaxed than he had during the final years of his marriage, suggesting that his decision to end their relationship had been appropriate for his personal well-being and life goals. Victoria initially struggled with reports of Robert's apparent contentment, as his improved emotional state seemed to validate his decision to abandon their marriage during her most challenging period. However, Dr. Hawthorne helped her understand that Robert's short-term happiness did not diminish the validity of her own feelings about his betrayal, or indicate that his behavior had been appropriate or ethical given the circumstances of her illness and recovery. The therapeutic work focused on separating Victoria's assessment of her own worth and recovery success from Robert's subsequent life choices and emotional states. His ability to find happiness with someone else did not reflect negatively on Victoria's value as a partner, or indicate that her expectations of marital support during illness had been unrealistic or inappropriate. Victoria's relationship with her family members had strengthened during her cancer treatment and divorce proceedings, as her parents and siblings provided consistent emotional support and practical assistance throughout both challenging periods. Her mother, Patricia Ashworth, had been particularly helpful in managing household responsibilities and business communications during Victoria's most difficult recovery phases. The family support had revealed depths of love and commitment that Victoria had not previously fully appreciated, creating stronger bonds and improved communication patterns that enriched her daily experience and provided security during uncertain periods. Her relationships with her siblings had evolved to include more frequent contact and deeper conversations about personal goals and life experiences that had been overshadowed by surface-level interactions during her marriage to Robert. Victoria's social life gradually expanded through professional networking events, community volunteer activities, and recreational pursuits that reflected her individual interests rather than compromises necessary for marital harmony. She joined a book club focused on contemporary women's literature, began taking cooking classes that explored international cuisines, and started attending cultural events that had not appealed to Robert during their marriage. The expansion of personal interests and social connections revealed aspects of Victoria's personality that had been suppressed or underdeveloped during her relationship with Robert. Her natural curiosity about other cultures, her appreciation for artistic expression, and her interest in learning new skills had all been minimized to accommodate Robert's preferences for routine social activities and familiar experiences. Victoria's dating life remained non-existent during her first year of independence, as she focused on personal healing and professional development rather than seeking romantic relationships. Dr. Hawthorne supported this approach while helping Victoria identify the qualities and characteristics she would value in future partners based on her experiences with both supportive and unsupportive relationships during challenging periods. The process of defining relationship criteria revealed that Victoria's priorities had shifted significantly following her cancer experience and divorce recovery. She now valued emotional reliability, authentic communication, and demonstrated capacity for providing support during difficult circumstances over the superficial attraction and lifestyle compatibility that had initially drawn her to Robert. Victoria's professional reputation within Charleston's business community had actually enhanced following her divorce, as colleagues and clients observed her grace under pressure and continued excellence in work performance despite significant personal challenges. The recognition that she had managed cancer treatment, divorce proceedings, and business growth simultaneously created respect for her capabilities and character that opened new opportunities for professional advancement and community leadership. The Charleston Chamber of Commerce invited Victoria to join their board of directors, recognizing her business success and community involvement as valuable assets for organizational leadership. The appointment provided additional professional networking opportunities while creating a platform for advocating on behalf of small business owners and healthcare-related community initiatives. Victoria's financial situation had stabilized following the divorce settlement, with her business income and asset ownership providing security that exceeded her needs for maintaining her preferred lifestyle. The successful navigation of divorce proceedings had demonstrated her capability for protecting her interests and making strategic decisions during emotionally charged circumstances, building confidence in her ability to handle future challenges independently. As Victoria approached her 35th birthday, she reflected on the remarkable transformation that had occurred during the previous 2 years of cancer treatment, marital dissolution, and personal reconstruction. The woman who had been focused on accommodating Robert's preferences while building their shared life had evolved into someone whose decisions were guided by clear understanding of her own values and unwavering commitment to personal integrity and authentic self-expression. The challenges that had initially seemed devastating had ultimately created opportunities for growth and achievement that exceeded her previous aspirations, demonstrating that adversity could serve as catalyst for positive change when approached with courage and strategic thinking rather than avoidance or resignation. Victoria's 35th birthday approached with a significance that extended beyond the typical milestone celebration, representing her complete transformation from dependent wife and cancer patient to independent businesswoman and community leader. The date carried additional meaning as the 2-year anniversary of her cancer diagnosis, creating an opportunity to reflect on the remarkable journey that had reshaped every aspect of her existence during the intervening period. The birthday planning process revealed how thoroughly Victoria's priorities and preferences had evolved during her recovery and divorce proceedings. Rather than the elaborate dinner parties that she and Robert had previously organized for milestone occasions, Victoria chose to celebrate with an intimate gathering of the people who had provided genuine support during her most challenging periods. The guest list included Dr. Hawthorne, her cancer survivor support group members, key staff from her marketing firm, and family members who had demonstrated unwavering loyalty throughout her medical treatment and marital dissolution. Victoria decided to host the celebration at her Charleston home, which had been transformed through renovations and redecorating that reflected her individual taste rather than the compromises necessary for marital harmony. The house now showcased contemporary art from local artists, furniture that prioritized comfort and functionality over formal appearance, and personal collections that reflected her interests in travel, literature, and cultural experiences that had been neglected during her marriage to Robert. The renovation process had provided therapeutic benefits beyond the practical improvements to her living environment, offering opportunities for creative expression and decision-making that reinforced her independence and personal agency. Each design choice represented freedom from external approval requirements and confidence in her own aesthetic judgment, creating a physical environment that supported her emotional well-being and professional productivity. Victoria's marketing firm had achieved unprecedented success during the months leading up to her birthday, with revenue growth that exceeded her most optimistic projections from the previous year. The expansion had been driven primarily by healthcare and wellness sector clients, who valued her authentic understanding of patient experiences and family dynamics during medical crises. Her personal experience with cancer treatment had become a professional asset that differentiated her services from competitors who lacked similar lived experience with serious illness navigation. The business growth had required Victoria to hire additional staff members and expand her office space to accommodate increased client demands and project complexity. The hiring process allowed her to build a team that reflected her values regarding work-life balance, professional development, and collaborative decision-making, rather than the hierarchical management approaches that had characterized her previous business operations. Victoria's newest team member was Alexandra Rivera, a recent graduate from the College of Charleston's marketing program, who possessed both exceptional analytical skills and genuine enthusiasm for healthcare communications. Alexandra's bilingual capabilities and cultural competency with Charleston's growing Latino population had already proven valuable for developing inclusive marketing campaigns that reached diverse community segments. The mentoring relationship with Alexandra reminded Victoria of her own professional development during the early years of building her marketing firm, when senior colleagues had provided guidance and opportunities that facilitated her career advancement. The experience of supporting someone else's professional growth created satisfaction that complemented her individual achievements while contributing to positive workplace culture and employee retention. Victoria's speaking engagements had evolved into a substantial secondary revenue stream that supplemented her marketing firm income while providing platform for advocacy on behalf of cancer survivors and divorced women facing financial and emotional challenges. Her presentation topics had expanded beyond healthcare marketing to include broader themes of resilience, professional development during personal crisis, and strategies for rebuilding life after devastating setbacks. The most significant speaking opportunity had come through an invitation to address the annual conference of the National Association of Women Business Owners, where Victoria would present the keynote address on transforming adversity into competitive advantage. The selection for this prestigious speaking engagement represented recognition of her achievements within the national business community and provided exposure that could generate additional client opportunities and professional development possibilities. Victoria's preparation for the keynote presentation required her to articulate the strategic thinking and decision-making processes that had enabled her to maintain business growth while managing cancer treatment and divorce proceedings. The analysis revealed patterns of resilience and adaptability that she had not previously recognized as exceptional, though the conference organizers had identified these qualities as inspiring examples for other women facing professional and personal challenges. The speech development process also prompted Victoria to consider the broader implications of her experience for other individuals who might benefit from her insights about managing multiple life crises simultaneously, while maintaining professional effectiveness and personal integrity. The recognition that her individual journey could provide value for larger audiences created a sense of purpose that extended beyond her immediate business and personal goals. Victoria's relationship with Dr. Hawthorne had evolved from therapeutic intervention to ongoing professional coaching, focused on leadership development and strategic planning for continued personal and career growth. The sessions now addressed advanced topics such as public speaking anxiety, work-life integration during business expansion, and strategies for maintaining emotional equilibrium while managing increasing professional responsibilities and community commitments. The coaching relationship had revealed Victoria's natural aptitude for strategic thinking and systematic problem-solving that had been somewhat constrained within her marriage to Robert, whose preference for routine and predictability had limited opportunities for creative risk-taking and innovative business development. Her independence had created space for exploring entrepreneurial possibilities and professional challenges that required the kind of bold decision-making that Robert had discouraged during their relationship. Dr. Hawthorne's guidance had been particularly valuable in helping Victoria recognize and address the perfectionist tendencies that had contributed to her success, while sometimes creating unnecessary stress and inefficiency in her work processes. The coaching work focused on developing delegation skills and team leadership approaches that would support continued business growth, without requiring Victoria to personally manage every aspect of operations and client relationships. Victoria's social life had gradually expanded to include romantic possibilities for the first time since her divorce finalization, though she maintained careful boundaries and selection criteria based on the relationship insights she had developed through therapeutic work and personal reflection. Her requirements for potential partners now emphasized emotional intelligence, demonstrated reliability during challenging circumstances, and authentic interest in her professional achievements and personal growth, rather than superficial attraction or lifestyle compatibility. The first serious romantic interest had emerged through her professional network when Dr. James Sullivan, an oncologist at Medical University of South Carolina, had approached her following one of her speaking engagements about cancer survivorship and professional development. Their initial conversations had revealed shared values regarding work-life balance, community service, and the importance of maintaining personal integrity during professional success. Dr. Sullivan's understanding of cancer treatment processes and survivor psychology provided unique compatibility with Victoria's experience and ongoing medical follow-up requirements. His professional expertise eliminated the need for extensive explanations about her medical history, while his personal character demonstrated the kind of emotional maturity and commitment to service that Victoria now valued above superficial relationship qualities. Their relationship had developed slowly and deliberately, with both individuals maintaining focus on their respective professional responsibilities, while exploring compatibility through shared activities and extended conversations about values, goals, and life experiences. The careful pace reflected Victoria's commitment to avoiding relationship patterns that might compromise her independence or professional achievements, while ensuring that romantic involvement enhanced rather than constrained her personal growth and career development. Victoria's financial situation had stabilized at levels that exceeded her previous expectations for individual achievement, with combined income from her marketing firm operations, speaking engagements, and strategic consulting work providing security that eliminated concerns about meeting her lifestyle preferences and professional development investments. The economic independence represented one of the most significant positive outcomes of her divorce, demonstrating her capability for generating substantial income through her own efforts, rather than dependence on marital partnership. The financial success had enabled Victoria to establish a charitable foundation focused on supporting cancer survivors who were facing relationship difficulties and economic challenges during their recovery periods. The Victoria Ashworth Foundation provided grants for therapy services, professional development training, and emergency financial assistance for individuals whose medical expenses and employment disruptions had created temporary hardship during treatment and recovery phases. The foundation development had required Victoria to learn nonprofit management skills and legal compliance requirements that extended her expertise beyond marketing and business operations into areas of community development and social impact measurement. The learning process had been supported by volunteer advisors who possessed nonprofit management experience and appreciated Victoria's commitment to evidence-based programming and transparent financial management. Victoria's involvement in Charleston's business and healthcare communities had expanded through board service and volunteer leadership roles that reflected her growing reputation for strategic thinking and effective collaboration. Her appointment to the Charleston Health Network Advisory Board provided platform for advocating on behalf of cancer patients and survivors, while contributing to policy development and resource allocation decisions that could improve treatment accessibility and support services. The community leadership responsibilities required Victoria to develop skills in public policy analysis, stakeholder communication, and consensus building among diverse groups with varying priorities and perspectives. The experience enhanced her professional capabilities while providing opportunities to create meaningful change in areas that directly affected people facing challenges similar to those she had navigated successfully. Victoria's medical follow-up appointments continued to provide consistently positive results, with her oncology team expressing confidence in her long-term prognosis and gradual reduction in monitoring frequency that reflected her excellent recovery progress. The transition from active treatment to routine surveillance represented a psychological milestone that reinforced her identity as cancer survivor rather than cancer patient, a distinction that had important implications for her self-perception and future planning. The approaching birthday celebration would mark not only her personal milestone but also the completion of her transformation from someone defined by her relationships and circumstances to someone whose identity was rooted in her individual achievements, values, and contributions to her community. The 2-year anniversary of her cancer diagnosis provided opportunity to reflect on the remarkable distance she had traveled, from the frightened patient who had first heard those devastating words, to the confident leader who now provided guidance and inspiration for others facing similar challenges. Victoria's preparation for the birthday celebration included reviewing personal journals and photographs that documented her journey from diagnosis through treatment, divorce, and reconstruction of her professional and personal life. The documentation revealed patterns of growth and achievement that had occurred gradually but consistently throughout the challenging period, demonstrating resilience and strategic thinking that had enabled her to emerge stronger and more capable than she had been before her trials began. The birthday would also mark the beginning of new possibilities for continued growth and contribution, as Victoria's established success in business and community leadership created foundation for even more ambitious goals and projects that could benefit larger audiences and create lasting positive impact. Her experience had prepared her for challenges and opportunities that would have seemed impossible during the early stages of her cancer treatment and divorce proceedings. As Victoria finalized preparations for her birthday celebration, she reflected on the remarkable irony that the events which had initially seemed like devastation had ultimately created opportunities for achievement and fulfillment that exceeded anything she had previously imagined possible. The birthday would celebrate not only her survival but her transformation into someone whose life provided inspiration and practical guidance for others, facing their own seemingly insurmountable challenges. Victoria's 35th birthday began with the familiar routine of morning yoga in her converted garage studio, followed by coffee while reviewing client correspondence that had accumulated during the weekend. The day held special significance as both a personal milestone and the 2-year anniversary of her cancer diagnosis, yet Victoria approached it with the calm confidence that had characterized her response to previous challenging circumstances throughout her recovery and reconstruction period. The first indication that this birthday would prove extraordinary came through an unexpected phone call from Patricia Williams at Harrison Coleman & Associates, the law firm that had handled her grandmother Eleanor's estate matters 2 years earlier. Patricia's voice carried an unusual formality as she requested that Victoria visit their offices that afternoon to discuss urgent matters related to her grandmother's will that required immediate attention and could not be addressed through telephone communication. Victoria's initial confusion about the timing of this legal consultation was compounded by her clear recollection that all estate matters had been resolved completely following Eleanor's funeral services. The modest bequests to family members had been distributed according to the will's specifications, with no indication that additional provisions existed or that future legal consultations would be necessary. Patricia's insistence on scheduling the appointment for that specific afternoon suggested circumstances that required prompt resolution rather than routine administrative procedures. The morning proceeded according to Victoria's planned schedule, with several client calls addressing campaign development projects and strategic planning initiatives that demonstrated her firm's continued growth and professional recognition within Charleston's business community. Her team had prepared a surprise birthday celebration featuring a custom cake decorated with her marketing firm's logo alongside cancer survivor ribbon symbols, creating an atmosphere of genuine appreciation for her leadership and personal resilience during challenging periods. Alexandra Rivera had coordinated the office celebration with characteristic attention to detail, ensuring that the timing accommodated Victoria's afternoon legal appointment while providing opportunity for meaningful recognition of her achievements during the previous year. The staff presentations included testimonials about Victoria's mentoring support and professional guidance that had contributed to their individual career development and the firm's collective success in acquiring prestigious client accounts. Victoria's lunch meeting with Dr. James Sullivan had been planned as a quiet birthday celebration at their favorite downtown Charleston restaurant, providing opportunity for private conversation about their developing relationship and shared interests in community service and professional development. James had presented Victoria with a first-edition copy of Maya Angelou's poetry that reflected their previous discussions about literature that had provided inspiration during difficult life circumstances. The thoughtful gift represented the kind of meaningful gesture that characterized James's approach to their relationship, demonstrating attention to Victoria's interests and values, rather than generic romantic presentations that lacked personal significance. Their conversation during lunch focused on Victoria's upcoming keynote presentation and his research projects involving innovative cancer treatment protocols, creating intellectual connection that complemented their emotional compatibility and shared commitment to helping others facing serious health challenges. Victoria arrived at Harrison Coleman & Associates 15 minutes before her scheduled appointment time, maintaining the punctuality habits that had contributed to her professional success and personal reliability throughout her business career. The law firm's reception area appeared unchanged from her previous visit, featuring the same conservative decor and formal atmosphere that projected stability and discretion appropriate for handling complex legal matters involving substantial assets and sensitive family circumstances. Patricia Williams greeted Victoria with professional courtesy that masked underlying tension, guiding her through familiar corridors to a larger conference room than had been used for their previous meetings. The expanded space featured a massive mahogany table surrounded by leather chairs and wall-mounted displays of legal certifications and partnership recognitions that emphasized the firm's expertise in handling sophisticated estate planning and wealth management matters. The conference room contained several individuals whom Victoria had not met previously, including senior partners whose presence suggested that her grandmother's estate involved complications requiring high-level legal expertise and strategic coordination. Patricia's introduction of the additional attendees included specialists in trust administration, tax compliance, and asset management, whose specific expertise areas provided initial indication that Eleanor's estate contained elements significantly more complex than the modest bequests that had been distributed previously. Patricia began the meeting by explaining that Eleanor's will had contained provisions that were activated only upon Victoria's 35th birthday, designed to ensure that any inheritance would be received when Victoria had achieved sufficient maturity and life experience to manage substantial financial resources responsibly. The delayed distribution mechanism had been structured through sophisticated legal instruments that had required ongoing administration during the intervening period, while remaining completely confidential until the activation date. The senior partner responsible for trust administration, Margaret Chen, presented detailed documentation explaining that Eleanor had established a comprehensive trust fund in 1995 that had been funded through systematic contributions from her business profits and investment returns over a 25-year period. The trust had been managed by professional investment advisors who had implemented diversified portfolio strategies designed to generate substantial growth while protecting principal value through various market conditions and economic fluctuations. Victoria listened to these explanations with growing incredulity, as the magnitude of Eleanor's estate became clear through the presentation of financial statements and asset valuations that exceeded her most optimistic assumptions about her grandmother's wealth accumulation. The trust fund had been structured to provide Victoria with immediate access to liquid assets totaling $50 million, along with ongoing distributions from additional investment accounts and real estate holdings that would generate substantial annual income for the remainder of her lifetime. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.